Okay, a bit of paper 2 revision. This question hasn't come up, by the way, in the last, since this exam has ever been created, guys. So it could come up this year. So let's just focus on a couple words. First of all, environmental impacts. You should be pretty all right with that. But it's the word industry that might confuse a few people. So very quickly, let's look at some industries that are more common in the UK or were once upon a time common. So I'm going to look at a few things. I'm looking at quarrying. So I don't know if you know what quarrying is, but you can have a idea by looking at the image. And steel production still happens in the UK. Coal mining, not so much, but these are all examples of industry, so you need to know that. First of all three of them I know straight away by looking at them have a negative impact on the environment. So that's a pretty easy question, but I'll go over that. But you need to focus on, can some of them become sustainable? That could be a 6 marker this year, or even bigger. But let's just have a quick look. Okay, so in terms of, let's say, the impact on the environment from industries, we focus on quarrying, and you can look at other industries like steel making and why that's bad for the environment. So if I look at this picture, in order to create a quarry, obviously it first of all destroys a huge amount of area and land in countryside areas. Now already I'm thinking about the impact on, let's say, biodiversity. Obviously it destroys natural habitats, which you can talk about, resulting in a loss of habitats and biodiversity. This obviously damages the natural beauty of the countryside as it scars the land. Okay, look at that massive pit, and that could also put off tourists. It destroys that natural beauty. You don't need to know so many, just need to know really like 2 of them. You could also talk about how they use explosives to obviously break up some of the land, and that creates noise pollution and adds dust to the surrounding air. But as you can see, there's quite a few things. It could also contaminate the soil, as they might use certain chemicals as well. And in terms of steel companies, as you can see right here at the bottom, we can see a lot of waste that is obviously sent to landfill sites from these companies. There might be a lot of, let's say, pollution, let's say, as they release a lot of toxic gases, because a lot of them are dealing with metal, and obviously they use, let's say, burning a lot of this metal and stuff like that. And as you can see, there'll be use of transportation vehicles as well, which adds to a lot of the air pollution. So I want to add to the second part of this lesson, which a question it could come up, which is what's been done to reduce this industry and the damage it does. So look at these people who are upset with quarrying and other industries and how it's impacting them. So in terms of how we can, let's say, fix up these quarry areas after they've been used, what can we do to make them better again? So this is what it would look like before: a massive open scar on the landscape, a massive quarry here, no longer used, used for its stone. But then now what we could do is something called restoration. So look at it, we could do little things, we call it landscaping and restoration, where we restore it back to its natural element. Okay, so like I said, if you get a 6 marker asking you how can modern industry or industries become more sustainable in the UK, like I said, focus on the word called restoration. Restoration is obviously trying to make it go back to its original state. But now what can companies do? You could easily argue that companies can do lots of things, such as create habitats, create into an area for water supply and agriculture, and also reduce certain things that they would do. Let's say have more strict controls, and things that will ensure that there is limited damage on the environment. An example that you need to know, most students might remember, is Tor Quarry Somerset. It's one of those lessons people don't really remember, but we need to quickly look at what things can you talk about in an exam, what they did at Tor Quarry. So just 2 points really we need to know. So obviously one thing that they did was they created like a wildlife lake. Okay, they created a wildlife lake which allowed there to be new habitats for the local environment, made it look more natural. You could easily say that the wildlife lake also was used for recreation as well. A lot of the area in Tor Quarry for that quarry land was landscaped by planting new trees and grass, which allowed it to blend in with the natural environment. It obviously also reduced air pollution. So you don't need to know more than any of those 2 there. Okay, so more general ideas of how can industrial development, like modern industries become more sustainable, is that actually we've got better technology. So forget about restoration because that's your example that you might use. But other more general methods you can talk about is stuff like that. Actually, modern industries can now have better technology where, let's say, harmful emissions are reduced. And not like it's a bit like carbon capture, but don't say carbon capture. You just say that harmful emissions can be reduced and let's say filtered out. There is this idea of desulfurization, but I'm not going to go into it because it can be quite complex. But just talk about either like there are more strict environmental targets and fines where let's say companies are now fined for if they're in accidents, so this will hopefully reduce any form of, let's say, environmental accidents. This is one way that we can reduce the amount of impact on the environment, and it'll be more sustainable because people can still work there, let's say in these factories, and do their jobs, earn their money, which is sustainable, but also there is limited damage on the environment. There's limited air pollution. There's not much damage done to water because people are not dumping stuff in the water. So please, people, remember this lesson. Okay, it's called, let's say, in industries and how they can become more sustainable, or you could get a full marker asking you how they impact the environment.